Education to order. Mr. Bing, can you please take roll call?
Roll call, please. Brown.
Here.
Board Member Elizabeth Callahan.
Here.
Wilson.
Here. Here.
Board Member Bill Gifford. Board Member Bimal Kapadia. Here. Thank you. Board Member Will Meyer.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Shana Sackett Gable.
Here.
Thank you. That is it.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'll wait to the notice. Please take notice that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the following manner, that written notice was sent from the Office of the Secretary of the Board at 3 p.m. on January 23rd, 2025. That said notice was sent via email to Maplewood and South Orange Township clerks and the editors of the News Record, Star Ledger, Tappan Soma, and the Village Green. Next, we'll have a quick superintendent update, followed by my president update.
Evening all. Again, want to commend the board on pursuing these board retreats and also the New Jersey School Board Association certification. So we're excited about the work ahead of us. Some great news over the last couple of weeks. We just met with all our athletic coaches yesterday and welcome our new football coach. And I know the Village Green did a nice article on him, so we look forward to that program moving forward. We are currently working on a variety of things. We met with our principals today to discuss various initiatives, including K-12 right-sizing, looking at courses, looking at classes for 25-26. We're currently doing work with Columbia High School around their course selection guide and also around future pathways for the high school in regards to students being able to get industry certifications, being able to get associate's degrees, being able to get anywhere from 15 to 30 to 60 college credits, dual enrollment opportunities with Seton Hall University, and a variety of other personalized pathways we've been charting out for the last few months and should be finalized hopefully within the next few weeks. Columbia High School's course selection guide will be going out, I believe, end of this week. We've been doing work on right-sizing courses, looking at enrollment over a 3-year time span, looking at student surveys, affinity groups, looking at courses that tie into college requirements, career and technical education. As we spoke about, we want to bring that back within the next few years, and a few other connections. Right now, we're at about 130 electives, county average around 85 to 100. We want to be somewhere between 105 and 110, 115 moving forward. So we're paying close attention to enrollment, also feedback from courses that have been taken over a 3-year period. The affinity group data we've gotten, as you know, we've been meeting with students for the last, even before my time, for the last 2.5 years in regards to courses. So we have undergone that work and we're excited about it. And currently we will be meeting with our faith leaders moving forward. I think we landed on a theme this year that would go into next, which will be around civil discourse. We are all seeing certain patterns and norms that have been established that we believe collectively as a school district, as faith leaders, as we've also had both mayors involved, that we really can change some of the past norms that I believe some were due to the pandemic, lack of face-to-face communication, and really focus on civil discourse and bringing the community together through shared discourse. So we're looking forward to sharing that work over the next month or so. Tying into that will be the children's cabinet we've been discussing. So we're looking forward for that group to really lead the children's cabinet work. And we sent out our Budget Advisory Council invites yesterday. As noted previously, over 105 applicants, which is just quite amazing, to be honest with you. So we sent out our invites. Our first meeting is sometime in the second week of February. We sent out schedules for the 4 meetings and agendas. Have already received acceptances of the WebExes, so we're looking forward to some fruitful conversations there. And we're going to continue to do our work around changing the state aid formula. For us, we just had a discussion with other superintendents, which include Millburn, West Orange. Many other districts are going to be severely impacted if the state aid formula continues in the current state. It is, with the cost of living rising, with state aid decreasing or being flat, with health benefits significantly going up, and for us specifically with our facility needs, something's going to have to change with that state aid formula. And I think the more we advocate, the better. I do want to thank our community members, because I know for a fact many letters and emails have been sent to our local senators and assembly people in regards to changing that state aid formula. So big thanks for our community for stepping out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bing. And then just a quick update from me, and then we'll go into hearing of individual and delegations. So tonight, the Board of Education is maintaining its commitment to ongoing retreats throughout the year to build on the skill sets and governance acumen necessary to provide appropriate oversight. As such, tonight we will be receiving training on 2 topics. The first is Board's role in curriculum and student achievement, which will be done here at the Horseshoe. Next will be data decision-making, which will entail a workshop that will be conducted at the side table so that members can brainstorm and collaborate on systems that will be carried into our monthly committee work. Before we get into the meeting, I would like to take a moment to recognize it is Black History Month, at a time when efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion are being challenged across the country. We reaffirm our unwavering commitment to uplifting and protecting those values in our schools. We recognize that our Black students, families, and educators are deeply impacted by these national conversations, and we stand with you. Black history is American history, and our collective future is stronger when we embrace the rich diversity of our community. Thank you to our educators for preparing and delivering lesson plans this month that recognize and celebrate the contributions of Black Americans to our nation's history, culture, and future. Now we will have public speaks, if there are any. I see that there is one listed online. Carrie McGee. So actually, first, let me read the hearing of delegations before we bring her on, just to be official. Thank you for coming in person. Well, thank you for joining us online this evening. The South Orange Maplewood Board of Education values public involvement and respects that you've taken the time to address the board at tonight's meeting. As this is the board's business meeting, a friendly reminder to please be respectful as we take into consideration your valuable input, which will inform future deliberations and work by the Board of Education and its committees. The board does have time limits by policy, and it will be enforcing those to enable as many people to speak as possible this evening. Each individual will be given 3 minutes to speak. The first public comment period is usually limited to 1 hour, with priority often given to items related to the meeting agenda, and the second period may be limited to 30 minutes. Okay, so, Carrie?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, please speak up, though. You're a little low. Thank
Okay,
you.
Let me see. Is that any better?
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Great. Hello, and thank you for your time and attention this evening. My name is Carrie McGee, and I'm a parent and an educator. As tonight, I know you'll be talking about curriculum. I want to make sure that you are all aware of the wonderful EBR program in our district. EBR stands for Evidence-Based Reading. It's a pull-out service provided by our district for students with dyslexia and other learning disabilities, including my 9-year-old daughter. Most commonly, the service is delivered in a small group setting pulled out of the general ed classroom for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, using Orton Gillingham principles, which is the gold standard in terms of teaching dyslexic students to read, write, and spell. In my opinion, the EBR program is the crown jewel in the Special Services Department. It's one of the few areas of special services in SOMSD that families are extremely satisfied with. This program is so successful because our district is fortunate to have many Orton Gillingham certified teachers who have graduated from the Fairleigh Dickinson Standard Training Program. In addition to being the intervention that allows many of our vulnerable students to reach their full potential, EBR also keeps dozens of students in district, saving the district hundreds of thousands of dollars. One EBR teacher can keep up to 30 students in district with daily pull-out small group instruction, which is great return on investment. Recently at Tuscan, while our beloved EBR teacher is out on maternity leave, at the first round of parent-teacher conferences, many of the families whose students received EBR were told that their students no longer needed the same amount of intervention and their intervention would be reduced or phased out. There have also been rumors of phasing out the entire EBR program, having EBR teachers train classroom teachers instead, not having certified OG teachers in EBR. I can't imagine why this would happen. Other districts are clamoring to hire Orton Gillingham certified teachers, so I can't wrap my head around why our district would be considering reducing or eliminating the program, especially because the students currently in the program had the Lucy Calkins Units of Study curriculum, so they didn't learn this systematic phonics in the general ed classroom either. I would urge you, as time goes on and the year goes on, to learn more about this program and how important it is to be delivered on a daily basis by Orton Gillingham certified instructors. Thank you.
Thank you. And that completes Public Speaks. Okay, so now we're going to transition to our training by NJSBA Rep. Jean Cleary. Please come on up for board's role in curriculum and student achievement. So we can ask questions, during this first presentation if you want, and then of course we can continue that conversation on the SAD tables.
You just press the down arrow.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Hi. Okay, if I may proceed, if we're ready. And it's a pleasure to be back here again with the board. I want to just take a moment to congratulate the new leadership on the board. And it's been a pleasure to have the back and forth that brings me here tonight to help all of you with the role and the important part that you play in your students' education. I want to welcome new board members. I understand your board is now working alongside new board members, which is always exciting. And I know that we are at the beginning of February, but I just want to take a moment to recognize, because January is Board Recognition Month, and thank you all for the commitment you've made to see that your students receive the finest education that they deserve. So thank you for your commitment. You do have a history as a district, for the benefit of the public to know, of taking advantage of these learning opportunities so that you're in a better position to serve the students of your district and address some of these complicated issues that you have to deal with regularly. So we'll start, when we talk about curriculum, understanding that the New Jersey Department of Education definition of curriculum is the entire range of the experiences that children have at school. So we can sometimes just think about what's happening in a specific classroom with a specific subject area, but when we talk about curriculum, we need to have a full understanding that it's everything that touches a child's day during the course of the day, and it includes compliance with state and national standards, grade level objectives, assessment practices and student benchmarks, and resources available to staff and students. So we want to really look at curriculum as not just a list of things, but it's also the philosophy that we have towards what the goals are towards student achievement. Student achievement is the focus of the work that all of us do, regardless of the position or title that we hold, right? And the board is basically a team made up and comprised of all of the individual board members, along with the superintendent, and that team needs to be able to work well together so that the focus always remains on students and student achievement. So we'll just start out with some very basic definitions, just so that we can all share the same language and understanding. So the curriculum, as I said, includes all materials, texts, lessons, and activities employed to instruct students, right? And you may hear the term curriculum framework used, which actually goes to the individual courses of study. So the framework is the instructional concepts that are going to be covered. The curriculum map is both of that tied to ensure that there's a sequence and completion of all areas by each grade level and before assessments. So when we look at curriculum, it's important that we not just look at the subject area, but the delivery of that and how we best deliver it and how we create an environment of supports that are necessary for children to be able to receive what's being presented to them, okay? So it's important, I think, to have a little bit of an understanding about overall how curriculum has been moved forward by the history of that we have here in New Jersey. So in 1875, the New Jersey Constitution actually made note of the fact that it was determined that all students in the state had a right to a thorough and efficient education. And that term, you'll hear even now about the requirements that we have to provide a thorough and efficient education to all students. So over time, what happened was that local control developed, and that's something we see to this day in New Jersey. We have over 580 public school districts. I believe it's 583 from what I read earlier today. And we value that local control. That's why you are individually here as board members, representative of that local control. But in 1996, it was recognized that while we do value local control, there needs to be some standards that we could help us to ensure that students come out of a 13-year school situation prepared for their futures. So we started to see the introduction of standards. Now, currently, we are under the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which, again, continuous improvement, which is something we talk about with our students and with ourselves, the continuous improvement of recognizing that the world that our students will be moving into requires other focus to make sure that they're ready for both college and career, and brings to them high-level skills that they will need to be successful in whatever path they choose going forward. So, as a board, there are some responsibilities that we need to be aware of, and one of those is the role the board plays in approving curriculum. So all new courses need to be approved by the board. Any course that has significant changes in it also has to be presented to the board for approval, and any required course material has to be approved. Now, the statute existed well before the world we live in, which is so digital, but to be faithful to the spirit of the statute. It represents both physical, books, things we can touch, and also online things. So when something is required, the use of the textbooks being required, but any reading material, for instance, that's required that the student has to use to do a report or to be used for the classroom, has to be approved by the board. However, if there's something for free read and the assignment is to select a book of the student's choice, that does not fall under what is required for the boards to approve. So we just want to be aware of that. So this is just the slide, but it's such an important slide. No, it's not extremely interesting to look at. We tried to go with the visual. The work that you do is really everything. Every conversation you have on every topic has to really be with students at the center of it, and how does it serve improving student achievement, right? So to be able to do that, it's very important that you're working in an environment that you can work as a team together. There has to be an environment of trust, honesty, and respect among the members of the board and with the superintendent, because very often there are, nothing is going to get emotions going more than when people come forward with how they feel it's impacting their child, right? So we need to invest the time in informing ourselves, and the best way to do that is to be able to work together as a team where you can ask the questions that are appropriate to be asked and work together for the benefit of the students of the district. And an important part of that is also, as board members, to understand the roles that you fill. And you are here, and I know you probably have gone through your ethics training, to understand that your role as board members is the authority rests with the board as an entity and not as you as individuals, and that you are here for policy making, planning, and appraisal and oversight. So we're going to want to stay focused in how we do what we do as board members to work alongside the superintendent, whose focus is different, but you're working cooperatively together on behalf of your students. So New Jersey CUSAC is the self-monitoring, auditing, evaluation process that's required through the Department of Education. And it addresses different areas. So tonight we're speaking about curriculum, and we'll look at the instruction and program section. So for each subject area, we need to ensure that it is aligned with the New Jersey Student Learning Standards and is in accordance with the department's curriculum implementation timelines and graduation requirements. So these are the things that are the framework of how we know we're moving forward, and we have to recognize that the curriculum must meet grade level and graduation requirements. It has to show that it has integrated accommodations and modifications, and we're going to look at that when we talk about equality versus equity in education and curriculum. It has to account for the assessments, the ways that we're going to know if we're on target to providing the education that students need to have to be prepared. It has to have a list of core instructional and supplemental materials for each grade level. Pacing guides, it's important to understand the role of pacing guides, which are what the teachers will use to ensure that things are happening in a sequential order on a timely way so that the full curriculum can become, what is being taught in that grade level in that class will be completed in time for assessments, right? We want students to be able to be prepared so that those assessments give us a true indication of how well our students are doing, that they've been prepared. The assessment is a data point. It is not the only data point, and we'll talk about that when we look at data in a moment. We want to ensure that our curriculum has interdisciplinary connections, right? Gone are the days where we only spoke about science in science class and history class. It's been proven that students learn best and there's deeper understanding when they see the connections from different subject areas, and it's presented in a way that becomes more of something that they can tie together those pieces, and that the information isn't being presented in silos. Of course, it's important that we are integrating 21st century skills to prepare students. So it's academics, but it's also soft skills. It's also the ability to integrate technology, right? Years ago, we were all very excited to be able to have a computer lab and a time of the week where kids may be able to touch a computer, right? And we've moved so far ahead to say that we don't really look at technology that way. We look at it as just a functioning part of the experience that they're having in the school, where it's appropriate, of course, at the appropriate grade levels and things, but it's really more integrated, the technology. And our curriculum also should be addressing career education, preparing students to also know what careers are out there, to spark that engagement and interest, and then be providing a way and a path forward, right? It kind of goes to the age-old question in education of, why do I have to know this? When we can make that connection for students of, what's out there for them, what are the possibilities for them, what are their interests, and what are they learning now that's important to help them arrive there. So the New Jersey Student Learning Standards and CUSAC is the self-monitoring auditing system that is required through the Department of Education. So the New Jersey Student Learning Standards include the K through 12, but also pre-K learning standards. And CUSAC will be monitoring to see how well we are delivering that and accounting for that in that audit type of process. So it will look at career readiness, life literacies and key skills, comprehensive health and physical education, understanding that we are educating the whole child. Mental and physical health is an important part of bringing students forward and providing the education they need. Computer science and design thinking, how they engage with that process, science, social studies, visual and performing arts, and world languages. And it's important to just note that under governance, which you are a governing body, 14 directs your attention to access to library and technology related to the curriculum. So that's an area where we want to ensure that we're providing those opportunities for students to have access to resource material and the information that they need. So we're going to take a look at managing for equality and equity in education. In the packets that I gave you, on the left-hand side is a memo that came out from the state of New Jersey. And while that's not, if you notice at the top, it wasn't directed to you as board members, but I just wanted to share it with you because this is an interesting time for the districts to be in. Right now, by June, each district has to provide their comprehensive equity plan that speaks to evaluating what changes may be required to ensure that the curriculum and what's happening in schools is actually accounting for equity and removing barriers. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's work that the district is engaged in, but it's another way to build your understanding as a board member. So boards are required to have a cohesive set of policies, and you are a policy-making body, programs and practices that ensure high expectations, positive achievement patterns, and equal access to educational opportunities for all students and staff, right? So those are the things that we know we are required to do, and you are here as board members to be familiar with what's expected and the role that you play in oversight of the curriculum. So it's hard to oversee anything if we don't have the understanding of what best serves our students and what's required of us. So as it mentions there, we're in that 3-year cycle, and now districts are focusing on presenting those comprehensive equity plans, developing them, and presenting them for approval to the executive county superintendent. That assures the public as well that, right, there are checks and balances, and that there's attention being paid for removing barriers for students in schools. So educational equity really means that every student has the educational resources, and I'm not sure why it's flashing, so I'm sorry, I'm looking at the laptop here, but the educational resources and rigor that's needed at the right moment in their education across all of those factors of race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, sexual orientation, family background, or family income, right? So 2 things to really be paying attention to when we look at equity. It's the ability to access educational resources and a commitment to ensuring that we have the rigor that's necessary so that all students move ahead and succeed. Not all students will be starting from the same place, so we have to make sure that we are not reducing the expectations for students who may be underperforming, that we instead look at that as our responsibility to address that underperformance and find ways to bring all students up, right? All students can learn. That's something we have to be committed to, and we need to be evaluating where we need to put our attention and focus to provide the necessary supports so that all students succeed. So when we look at equality and equity, a visual can mean a lot, but on the left, we have equality, right? We see that everybody wants to watch the game, so everybody gets a box to stand on. Well, we know that that doesn't really serve everyone because their needs are different. So we focus on talking about equity, leveling the playing field a little bit by maybe giving the bigger box the more supports to those that need it so that they can move ahead and be successful as well. The aspirational goal of this work is that we should be moving towards justice. By focusing on equity and making a commitment to equity, we can move to a more just place where we can be removing barriers for all students. So the board's role in curriculum is that we recognize that you are representatives of the community and the stakeholders, and you are here to, because you have a duty to ensure that the community's educational expectations and desires for its children are realized. So your mission statement outlines those aspirations and goals for student achievement, and that should be a guiding principle of the work that you do. Very simply, to sum it up here in 3 points, is that the board's role is to approve what is being taught, and we recognize that to do that means to become familiar with a lot of information, to have an understanding of the educational plan, to be focusing on equity and resources, right, of how you can provide those necessary things. Monitor the process to ensure that what is being taught is being learned. So when you support and approve the curriculum, you want to have information being provided regularly to you, not just test assessment information, but really getting and we're going to talk about data, but getting information of different types from different sources to really give a fuller, deeper understanding of where the district is, what's serving, what's working in that curriculum with students, what might need to be tweaked or looked at, and what impact changes out in the world are having that might drive necessary changes that have to be addressed in the curriculum. And the board's responsibility is also to, while approving the curriculum and the educational plan for the district is to ensure that the resources are provided for the learning, right? Things cost money, and the decisions have to be made that align in the budget with the goals and aspirations that you have in your educational plan for students. So, again, just mentioning your mission statement is reflective of what the community feels is important for children to move out of this district, having to be seen as successful, and that success would be that they have opportunities ahead of them and experiences that support them to move forward in a career or college going forward, to have the life that they would choose to have. And all curriculum should be directly linked to the goals and objectives and be specifically designed to meet identified needs and achieve goals. So we talk about goals, we have strategic planning, multi-year goals. Those can help inform the district annual goals, taking in the information of where attention has to be focused and where resources should be focused on. So that's the work that is in front of you. So what's a board to do, right? The recommendations are that you have to provide a budget supporting your curriculum, right? Otherwise, we just have a plan, but we don't have the ability to ensure that that plan really meets the goals that we have set for our students, and students will be negatively impacted. So we need to be very tight and draw those together, curriculum and budget, to support that educational plan. Remembering that good curriculum does, the work of good curriculum does cost money. It takes time and resources to develop, implement, and assess student achievement. We need to address things such as release time for teachers and professionals to be working together to do that work. It's not the board's work to be done, but it's the board supporting the work of the teaching staff and administration. Ensuring that materials, literature, technology is discussed and budgeted for each year, having an understanding of when the curriculum requires that there's cyclical review and where you are at in that process, and how, while in one area, textbooks may not have to be, and when I say textbooks, I of course mean online versions as well, but they may not have to be replaced or updated as often in one subject area as opposed to another. You may be bringing in new programs that require new materials, so you have to have a full understanding of what it is that you're looking at. And importantly, you need to understand the professional development that will be required, because you can support the best curriculum development and provide the money for all of the resources and texts that'll be used in the classroom. But if you don't take the time to support your teaching staff to be prepared to best roll out that and work with students, the methodology of how it's going to be introduced to students, it can have detrimental impacts. So professional development is actually something that you need to be considering when it's appropriate, what that looks like, not just for the content that's being brought to children, but also the methodology used to deliver it. Excuse me. So scheduling curriculum presentations. Excuse me. Making curriculum and student achievement presentations a regular part of your board meetings. And that can look different from meeting to meeting. It might be that there's a presentation to give you a report out on data that you need to have to check, like those check-ins. Are we moving along? You don't want to wait until the very end to make that decision about, it did or didn't meet our expectations. We want to have check-ins that are appropriately scheduled out to have a full understanding and allow for any adjustments that might need to be addressed. We also want to have an understanding of what information is provided to us and when regarding curriculum. and what is your internal process of how you can make a request for additional information or resources. You might have a question and be pointed in a direction of something that you can access on your own through the Department of Education website, for instance. So just having an understanding of working with the information available to you and having those presentations. Another important thing as a board to consider is allowing for staff and student presentations and recognitions, right? So it may not always be someone coming out with a data-driven report, but having the opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments and successes as you go along, right? When we make a commitment to continuous improvement, one of the things we have to recognize is we're never finished, right? So we don't want to put off celebrating things till everything is perfect. We want to create an environment where we can celebrate those good successes, communicate that out to everyone so the stakeholders can feel engaged with what's happening in the district, while at the same time staying focused on attending to those things that require attention and areas of improvement. Become familiar with the programs that are taught in your district. That's important because you will be faced with having to make changes and understanding why the changes are being recommended, what impact they will have on your students and teaching staff, and understanding that the decisions you make should be made understanding the impact that those decisions have. Encourage displays of student work and at board meetings and throughout the district. So I think most schools are happy to do that, but it's another way to really reach out to your community. And we don't want the only time for our community to be hearing about the schools is when assessments come out, right? That's important for sure, but also to have a fuller, well-rounded picture of what's going on, celebrating the successes, seeing the work of the students, and celebrating our students as they're moving forward. So curriculum evaluation, right, is an ongoing evaluation of the curriculum, which is a real must, right? We need to evaluate on an ongoing basis to make sure that the district is following the 5-year curriculum plan and that it's aligned with the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which is a requirement. We want to look at year-end evaluations of new curriculum and building in the evaluation structure into that, right? So we know that we may start something new with our curriculum, and we may not see all of a sudden, just because we put something new in place, student achievement, flying up. But what we want to have is built in a schedule of evaluation, what reasonably we would expect to see in a period of time, understanding that achievement gains will be made over a longer period of time than just months or weeks. So you want to also be discussing the criteria that will be used to determine whether those programs are meeting the stated objectives and are improving student achievement for all students. And when we talk about data, we talk about, receiving disaggregated information so that we can look clearly and see, who is it serving and who needs more support so that they can get the full benefit of the curriculum and the educational plan that we have adopted. And of course, you'll be reviewing student assessment data, summative and formative data, summative data being more concrete, and product, what is the product, what's the end result, and your formative assessment data more on the process, the methodology of working with students to support growth throughout the year. And a good example of that, as opposed to just test scores, would be how our teachers might be working with students for a research paper and requiring that they deliver a proposal for the research paper prior to just giving a research paper and giving a grade at the end, right? Working with that student to guide them on the process of what are they doing well? What do they need to reflect on and come back and put more work on? So that is allowing for a deeper understanding for our students. And it's important that the board understands the differences between that, so that when you're hearing things referred to, you have an understanding of what that really represents. So the formal adoption of curriculum and professional development is required under statute and is monitored through CUSAC, as we've stated. This serves the purpose of establishing the importance of the curriculum and allows for the continuity and direction, right? So what we don't want to see is something isn't getting us where we had hoped to be, and we throw it out and start over again, right? What is a more productive way to serve our students is to be evaluative and identify what works and what needs to be addressed so that all students can benefit from that. But it makes the focus of the work that you're doing as a district with the administrators and the teaching staff through the superintendent, that it's a focus of the work you do. There's so much, and I was a board member myself for 6 years and served on the curriculum committee and chaired that committee for most of my time. And it's the focus of why we are all here, right? To drive student achievement, to be committed to that. And as a board, many, many, many issues are going to come before you, and it is very easy to be distracted by those issues. Not to say that they don't require your attention, but always try to bring the time you're going to spend on issues back to how does this serve students? And how is this going to help us move our students forward? Right? Because we don't want to be exhausted by the distractions. We want to be really focused on the work that we need to do. So just for your reference, these are some policies that will guide you specifically in the area of curriculum. Curriculum adoption, the policy speaks to that. Curriculum design and development, and the guidelines for evaluation and selection of instructional materials. So your policies are there. Policies are a communicative tool, and they help guide the actual work in district of how they're going about the business of running the schools. So critical guidelines for board members to consider are the establishment of the district goals on student achievement. Annually, when you as a board work with your superintendent to develop the district goals, we should see that they have a focus on how these goals are going to serve students and drive student achievement for all students. You need to, as a board, be aware of federal and state laws, including the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, but other federal and state reform initiatives. We are at a time right now of flux. There's a lot happening and a lot of discussions. It's hard to, frankly, stay ahead of everything that is happening. So work with your educational experts, your leadership, and lean on them as resources to guide you on how what's happening may be impacting your district. Make student achievement a focus at all of your board meetings to help the community understand the work that's really happening here and the importance of the discussions and how those discussions should really be focused on students. And commit the adequate resources that are necessary to see the successes, right? The goals are important, but they need the resources behind them for curriculum development and professional development so that the delivery of the curriculum will be meaningful to the students and be accessible, right? It's communication. Communication has to be delivered and received. So we need to make sure that our students are in the best place for them to receive the lessons that are being brought to them. We want to look at, as a board, what was the last time that there have been new materials selected for this subject area? Is that appropriate? And it might be. Maybe now is not the time to make a change, but what are we talking about seeing in the next year or so that may help us with decisions that we make about whether we should be supporting something now or if there's a proposed change coming up for that? Does your budget, is it really focused on supporting the initiatives that are being developed to provide those resources for student achievement? Does it support the annual goals or the strategic planning goals? You know, one of the things that we have to be careful about is not operating these things in silos, right? Not seeing the connection between our strategic planning, multi-year goals. We need to bring them into what our annual district goals are. We need to move forward with all of that information, which really will be most efficient and best serve your students. And ensuring that you're reviewing and monitoring progress in these always, right, with an understanding of what it is we're looking at, what it is, where our students are, and not relying only on one source of information or one type of information. We'll talk about that with our discussion about data. And how do we use program evaluation, student assessments, and district goals in developing the budget as drivers for those conversations? Are we appropriating the sufficient dollars for professional development to improve teaching and learning, right? Not just on content, but on methodology, as we discussed earlier. Can we fund our 5-year, multi-year facility plans, technology plans, and curriculum revision plans, right? The budget, while it is addressing an annual, has annual goals, of course, the budget and where we spend our money and how we spend our money will have longer tail effects as well. So we want to make sure that we have an understanding of that. Will we need to make changes to facilities next year or in the next several years to accommodate student learning? That could be because the way the courses that you choose to have and introduce to your students may require different types of classroom space to deliver them properly. You might be impacted, your facilities might be impacted by development in the community with new families moving in, increasing enrollment. Your enrollment may be changing with students coming in with different needs, language needs, or special needs that have to be planned and accommodated. So before the adoption process, you want to consider what is the district's instructional vision for different subject areas? Are you ensuring that there are high expectations, positive achievement patterns, and equal access to educational opportunities for all learners, including students and teachers? Our teachers are lifelong learners as well, so we need to ensure that we're focusing on that. Have we included social and emotional learning components where they're appropriate in curriculum areas? I think we recognize now that a student arrives in school and they need to be in a healthy, safe environment, and they need to be both physically well and mentally well for that lesson to really have the impact for that student. So we need to be addressing as appropriate so that students are prepared to take in that lesson. What community values, needs, and curricular concerns should you be aware of, and so that you can properly respond? How can you ensure that there are diverse perspectives in the selection process? So one of the things we talk about when we talk about diverse perspectives, right, is the importance of the curriculum being, providing mirrors and windows for our students, right? We want students to see themselves in the classroom reflected, but we also want to provide an opportunity as a window to learn about things that they aren't and that they don't have personal experience with. So it's important to have both of those things, that students can see themselves reflected in lessons and make that connection, and also be engaged with learning about what it is that they haven't experienced directly and aren't familiar with. How will you determine the alignment to college and career readiness standards, preparing students for the path that's ahead of them? And will you be using external or independent vetting? So you have a host of educational experts in your district who have tons of information to share with you, their professional experience. But sometimes something may arise that even they would find requires some outside support, right, on difficult, complicated topics, and understanding, what that request is, if it's made, and how you can support that is important. What's the plan for the rollout of the curriculum, the implementation, and the professional learning to ensure that from day one, we're ready to go, right? Change is always a challenge, and we need to be thoughtful in how we institute that change, and especially because we're working with young minds. We want to also, of course, remember to engage and communicate changes and prepare the community so that you're providing the accurate information about the why behind what you're doing and the work that you've done, and what certainly the work that the district leadership and administration and teachers have done, so that it ensures that the community is aware of that work and that everyone is prepared for the challenges ahead. You have to look at the selected materials to ensure that they are aligned with the standards that are required under the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Ask if the materials include supports for diverse learners, understanding that we want to, again, be providing that equity to support students where they need it so that they can be successful. Who will benefit from decisions that are being made when we make changes, and changes happen with curriculum, or any changes, really, frankly, that you're going to support as boards. Always recognizing that there are real people, real students, and real families that will be affected by it. It may be a necessary change, but communicating why it's necessary, and recognizing that there might be an opportunity to reach out for those that will be affected by that change, so that we keep them engaged is important. And what data will be collected and utilized to inform ongoing professional learning for educators and assess whether materials are meeting student needs. We should have an understanding of that so that you as board members are able to fulfill your appraisal and oversight function, which is so important. So after the adoption process, the work continues when it comes to curriculum. What are your expectations for the use of materials, and how will those expectations be communicated? Very specifically, your policies should address things that I mentioned earlier about required approval of the use of materials, but because we live in a digital age, and it's not necessarily a bad thing if supplemental materials, online resources are being used, but a policy should be in place that clearly defines what expectations are around that, and so that there are checks and balances brought in so that the administration could be aware of things that are being used with our students to check for that appropriateness, by grade level or class. Do teachers need to supplement the curriculum to meet student needs? It might be totally appropriate to do so, but if you're seeing that teachers are really having to use a lot of supplemental materials that they are charged with finding and using with students, that may indicate that you need to be focusing on why that is so, right? Is it supplemental really, or is it filling a need that required materials should be filling, right? How often are they supplementing? You know, that's important, and why, and where are they getting that material from? So your policies should be outlining that, the expectations. Your policies are a way to communicate and guide the administration forward. So that's an important thing to consider. What ongoing support and professional learning will you provide to teachers and site leaders on the implementation of the curriculum, right? And how is it impacting student learning over time? And one of the things that I really always feel is important to just point out for the benefit not only of the board, but for the community as well, is that we make plans and we fund those plans. But we have to be reasonable in the expectations. So while you support professional development and the review of curriculum on a cyclical review, and you support the work that the staff has to do for the creation of the curriculum and how it's going to be delivered, we need to understand the impact of those choices on student learning can take several years to be reflected in the data. What you are looking for in the data when you're looking at the data is to see that you're progressing at and meeting reasonable goals that have been set in advance, and if not, that you're addressing why not, right, to address it. But it would be foolhardy to just expect that we're going to quickly change things and see drastic changes. It does take time and effort, and it's better to be focused on if something isn't having the expected outcomes, what's behind that, and what could we do to move that forward. So just reminding us all that together we really make a difference. And you understand as board members that the authority rests with the full board, and it's important to recognize that you are a team. This is a team sport, and your superintendent is part of your team. Your educational leadership is part of the team, and it's important to be able to, at times, set aside our own personal feelings about something, making sure that we're committed to educating ourselves so that we're well prepared to fulfill the functions of policymaking, planning, and evaluation and oversight. So that is the work that is of the board. So that is really a conclusion of this part of it. I believe we are going to be moving over for the data part.
Thank you, Jean. Were there any initial questions from the board? Yes? Go on. Oh, sorry. Yes. Jeff and then Liz.
Thank you very much for coming to our community. I had a question about curriculum approval.
Yes.
And I'm talking about, what I'm thinking of when I ask this question is really things that have happened in this district historically, not present. I'm not planning to vote against any curriculum that's being planned right now. Okay. But let's say a curriculum is proposed to you in math or English language arts, and the process of creating that curriculum has been followed properly. Mm-hmm. But then again, based on how that curriculum has been used in other districts or other states that it hasn't gone well. It hasn't been that effective. Maybe it's been effective for some students and not for others, or that teachers can't stand it. Or it comes with very expensive professional development. For whatever reason, you might call it a personal feeling, but you don't think that curriculum is going to be effective. Sure. And it might even undermine a district goal. Would you respect a board member who opposes or even votes against that curriculum if they believe that it's going to undermine a district goal, despite attestations that it's going to be effective and good?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good point, and that at times.
Sorry, wait.
Oh, sure.
If we could have a little conversation, actually, I could explain what I'm thinking of. In 1990, this district adopted whole language, and I have an article about it if you want to see it. And the process was followed very well, and there were town hall meetings on it, and they even promised a lot of professional development about it. Although back in 1990, whole language was already very controversial, and it was foundering in California, I believe. Would you respect, board members who would vote against a curriculum that think it's not going to be effective?
So to answer that, it's pretty much the answer I would give just for how boards function, right? So I think that the work of a board is to come together and be able to, and we'll talk about data, right, and the importance of that and what drives our decisions. And I didn't mean to imply that you shouldn't have those feelings and those questions, and those can be totally appropriate. I think it's important to work together as that team to come up with the answers, pose the questions, right? Hear the response given, and then determine if your concerns can be addressed properly, right? Overall, boards should be working towards building consensus through understanding of the topic. And in this situation, it's curriculum, right? And you build that consensus by educating yourselves together as a board, working with your educational leadership, working with superintendent who is running the district, and making sure that we're staying in the lane of a board member, right? And if we have a feeling that is reflected in a vote, say, right? That when we have those discussions, and they're productive discussions, and we're really committed to working towards consensus, to building understanding, to addressing the minority opinion on something, okay? It really is important that a board can come together and be united for the steps going forward. Right? So that's when ultimately, in reality, we sometimes get to a majority-minority, right? So you may not carry the day. You may voice your opinions, but the majority decides to support the vote to approve the budget, the curriculum, which you do with the budget as well. But it's important that you're operating in an environment that allows for that trust and that discussion to happen. Right? And if you aren't in the minority and the minority opinion has been taken in and discussed and considered before the board moves ahead, then the best practice is really to move ahead in support of the work, right? Because that unity is really important in creating a climate and environment of how you're going to operate together on many different things. It's very rare that we're going to get 9 people who are going to all agree on everything all of the time. That's just not going to happen. So what is important is that understanding that we work towards consensus, and unless we have something that really prevents us from being able to support the majority opinion after everything has been considered, especially the minority view, we should try to, you asked me the question of respect. I respect anyone who's giving their full attention and commitment to working together towards consensus. And hopefully you can arrive at a place that will allow you to voice your concerns about it, perhaps ask for a certain evaluation, right? So that these are my concerns and why I don't, I'm not as hopeful as other people. And by evaluating that and seeing it, that can alleviate some of that discomfort, I hope. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your presentation, for coming here tonight. And I really just wanted to thank you for emphasizing the importance of relationships and trust. I appreciate the reminder that as a Board of Education member, it really is incumbent on us, beyond just our function of oversight and policy to drive student achievement, to also build and model that culture of celebration, as you said, right, where we support and celebrate the success of our district, teachers, and of course our students. This really does reinforce the vital role that we play in building that positive collaborative educational community, and I think aligns well with what Superintendent Bing said earlier in terms of the work that he'll be doing with our faith and community leaders around civil discourse both online and offline. To that end, just to kind of build on what Board Member Bennett said, in terms of as we're building consensus, you talked through a number of different slides and talked about relationships, obviously trust being a really critical component of being an effective Board of Education. And the decisions we do have a direct impact on kids. And so this is emotional work because as caregivers, kids are our most precious gifts, right? And so to clarify, our role as board members is to seek clarity within our committee structures, yes, right? Even if they're hard questions, and attempt to build consensus based on the expertise and recommendations of our administrators. And then those questions that you were asking would be the ones that would appear kind of within committee. And as that wouldn't mean that we are reaching out to parents. We are reaching out.
Oh, no, thank you.
Of course, right. We wouldn't directly reach out to a parent, say, to evaluate their opinion on something, or a teacher to evaluate their opinion on something. That would then be the work of the district.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of
Thank
course.
you for bringing that up. That is oftentimes something that is misunderstood, right? So understanding the roles and responsibilities as a board member is so important. When we talk about the evaluative process, you're going to be approving things. So to do that, you have to have the information you need to be able to make that judgment, to support something, to evaluate it over time, and those and how we're going to evaluate it should be built in. But the board, especially as individuals, should not be having those conversations, right? The superintendent is charged with running day-to-day operations in the district and coordinating staff and staff focus and reporting out the information to the public. So as a board, I would say the part that you play in it, which is very important, is to understand, what is the schedule that will receive the information that it will be reported out, making sure that it appears on the agenda so that it can be published, so that the community can be engaged and come out and hear it and learn and get that information as well. So yes, it's very important to stay focused and within the responsibilities of board membership. It's also, I'd like to just point out, part of the code of ethics to understand that we don't, as individuals, have authority, and that authority rests with the board, and there are real concerns about individuals speaking out individually for any topic, frankly, because the School Ethics Act exists to ensure that the community has faith in the board and the decisions that are being supported. And when we have too many voices reaching out, even with good intent, by the way, too many voices confusing the public, which would lead them to believe that their trust is being broken. The Ethics Act was designed to hold that public trust. And the way we do that is by clearly understanding the processes we use to communicate with them, to make the information available to them. But what is part of the board's role and what's part of the superintendent's role is different. And that responsibility would lie with the superintendent. Yeah.
Nana, thank you. That was so helpful to provide that clarity. I had a follow-up. We reviewed this New Jersey Department of Education submission of the comprehensive equity plans. So just curious, and you kind of alluded to this, how is NJSBA or the New Jersey Department of Education, if you know, approaching the development and implementation of these mandated comprehensive equity plans in light of the current national climate? Executive orders like ending radical indoctrination and ending radical and wasteful DEI programs have generated significant anxiety and kind of run counter to the spirit of these plans and certainly our district's values. So are there any anticipated challenges or impacts that we should be considering as we move forward with these types of plans as a district?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. It is a challenging time, I recognize. I do want to just go back and say that I shared it with you for the board's information, really, and that the work is done by the district, the administration, right? But so that you're aware that that's out there and that's a focus of their attention right now. I, quite frankly, am not prepared to provide more insight at this time. New Jersey School Boards, I will say, is always monitoring through our governance team what happens at the state and federal level and prepares a response. We exist as an entity to advocate on behalf of boards and the students within the districts. And so that work is ongoing and continues. And we do try to, on our website, I would suggest just, keeping informed about what's happening on our website. We are sending out, regular information all the time, but especially in this area of the impacts that we can expect to see and next steps after that. But it's really changing as we're sitting here right now, unfortunately. So, yeah, of course.
Real quick, because I know we want to get over there.
Yeah.
But one of the sentiments that you emphasized a lot, which I think gets lost, is that, every decision we make, student achievement should really be at the center of it. And one thing that, really stuck out to me was this idea of students doing presentations at a board meeting. And I think, centering student achievement, we should hear more from students. And that's one thing I've never seen really at a board meeting. Can't put that on you, Bing, you just got here. But, I just really quick, what does that look like to you? I think that's something that we need to do in the district. When the rubber meets the road, what is this curriculum doing? How are the students feeling about it? I would love for you to just share like 2 minutes how that's looked.
Yeah, sure. I would not.
No.
I'm not, of course, going to overstep and tell you what you need to be doing in the district, but some things that have worked successfully in other districts are, first of all, student voice should always be considered, and the board should have a student representative who's on it, and you have two, which is wonderful. That is, the first opportunity that allows for them to not only hear the topics that are being discussed and understand, but then to actually provide that feedback from the student's perspective of what impact those changes that are being made are having, right? But in another real way to really celebrate students is, invite them and their teachers out to kind of talk about the actual programs that they're in, right? You approve things all the time, whether it's a field trip or an opportunity for them to participate in a science fair at their school, or someone to, to have them at a board meeting to make some type of a presentation that is on, available virtually so that the community, whether or not they can be here or not. Having things, we celebrate our athletes, right, when we go out to all of the games and theater programs, but, other districts, my home district was very committed to every year having an art presentation where, it was a gallery walk, and not only parents and guardians were invited, but it went out to the broader community to come in and see the schools, right? We know that our schools, out of necessity, are locked down a bit more than they have been in the past, right? Which makes it difficult for the community at large to always, they can't just walk in and walk the hallways and see all the great things that are happening, but being able to either in person or sometimes, I think, teachers are so willing to share the wonderful things that they're doing with their students and the things their students are accomplishing, to giving them an opportunity to even if it's some little video that they can show to kind of see what's actually getting a taste of what's happening in the schools. All of those things can be really helpful to drawing that connection of these are students are human beings, and we're making big decisions that impact them, and we want people to see the real faces behind all of the work that's happening and celebrate it, right? We see the impact that current events have been having on the teaching profession, being able to get and retain teachers, keeping good teachers in, because it's hard work done in a hard environment at times. So anything we can do to, celebrate along with them and with students, and remember that's really the work that we're doing, and celebrating doesn't mean that we're taking our eye off the other things that we need to be focusing on, right? But to give that, it should be a more joyful experience, because the work we do is sometimes dry and hard, but it affects real little people. So keeping that always at the center is really helpful.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I had two questions. One is, you talked about scheduling curriculum presentations. How is that done, with other districts that you have been to? Is it really whenever there's a new curriculum coming into a place, or do districts have kind of a regular cadence where they're saying, hey, we're going to talk about the ELA curriculum this month, next month we're going to explore this, certain science curriculums?
Yeah.
What does that look like operationalized?
Yeah, a lot of that can be organized through your curriculum committee, CNI, the CNI liaison with the superintendent to see what's kind of appropriate for that time of the year, perhaps. But I think it's more important that the board has an expectation and communicates the expectation and is guided by the superintendent to kind of help you realize that, so that things are, it's just like we want the information on test scores, but it's not appropriate that at every meeting, that's all we're going to talk about, right? It should be appropriate time, and the leadership can definitely guide you on what that looks like. And yes, it could be new curriculum. It could be revisiting the new curriculum towards the end of the year to say, like, what did we find was working? And not being afraid of talking about, we want to celebrate our accomplishments, but also being willing to talk about the difficult things of, well, we see this as something that we need to address further, right? So I think just having that schedule and getting the input of your educational leadership is really important to guide you.
Really quick, just one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned the importance of professional development, which I totally agree. Can you talk a little bit about the board's role in professional development and helping, I guess, ensure that our teachers are getting the professional development that meets their needs?
Yeah, so I think with those discussions happen around, your administrators in the building, your content supervisors, if you have content supervisors, really are working directly with the teaching staff to understand where the needs might be. Your superintendent certainly is your educational leader of the district and coordinates with the other members of the staff to identify those areas that would benefit from professional development. So I think it's an easy one to understand for new curriculum, something new you're adding. It's kind of obvious that that's probably a good place to put professional development. But we may have an area when we look at student achievement, and we may see when we break it out in groups, subgroups, that some students are struggling. And is it based on location? Is it based on, we can have excellent teaching staff, but everyone can improve what they do, continuous improvement, right? We always see, no matter whether it's in education or the corporate world, there are going to be people who take up change quickly. They're the quick adapters to change. And then there are people who may have a lot of experience, but are a little bit slower to take up change and may need more supports to feel comfortable with that change. So addressing that, that it's not only new teachers coming in that might need professional development, or only new curriculum that's being implemented that may require that professional development, but it might be working with staff who's not comfortable, right? And an obvious one, I think, is technology. Right? We're working with students in classrooms that are digital natives that when you can't figure out how to hook the TV up, just ask, your 6-year-old and that's going to get done for you. So we have teaching staff that at times just didn't have the experience. So we need to provide that so that they can be successful and work successfully with the students. So I think a lot of factors can go into it.
This may be kind of a back to basics question, but just to contextualize your presentation, you've gone over a lot of very important roles that the board has in reviewing or a new or change of curriculum before it's accepted and then monitoring it after it's accepted.
Yes.
But obviously, the board is not choosing or proposing a curriculum, right? We are looking at what the administration is bringing to us, and the majority of us on the board are not educators. So I guess in looking at what our role is, when we're really being asked to either ratify a proposal by the administration or to overrule it, how would you guide us in looking at a framework or a threshold for when to agree and when we should say we're going to put your recommendation aside and use our own judgment? How does that?
Sure.
Because we have a responsibility, but when should we use it?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think that some of what we'll talk about next in terms of getting data and knowing how to work with data will help answer that for you, right? It's You're not expected to be the educational experts, right? But you need to be familiar with things and have your questions answered so that you can make good decisions. But again, going back to the slide with the building the trust, right? We have to have trust in our experts that are here and the guidance that they're providing and the information they're providing to support their point of view, right? Their request for you to move forward in a certain direction should be, clear to you of what that means. And, we want to be careful as board members that when we're up late and we're seeing at night an advertisement about, a new math program that's just, really successful all over the world, and we come in, we may want to ask the superintendent about, what do you think about that? But understanding that our educational leaders are the ones that are most knowledgeable, have the experience and the training and the education to support what they're presenting to you. And that's where building that mutual trust, in the board relationships is so important. And asking informed questions, right? So actually taking the time to educate yourself on different things. And it's fine if you think like, I've heard that this is in place and it's not really working, that should be considered, but giving the leadership the opportunity to discuss why one path is better than another and being as educated as we can to then support that, right? Sure.
Thank you. I know that a Board of Education can't use its district goals to say like create a certain class or something. But like, let's say like there's a certain area of instruction that you think the district should improve in, like maybe teaching kids foreign language or engineering or the arts. Like, would you think it's okay for a Board of Education to write to its district goals, like some kind of language about improving a particular area of instruction? Like for foreign language, like, have a district goal, kids graduate fluent in a foreign language, and then the administration think of ways to support that. Is that okay, like in a district?
Well, I
goals?
think that the process, we need to understand what that process looks like, right? So as a board, you reflect, you make decisions based on the stakeholder input, right? Your stakeholders being your students, your community, and you as a board, what you think is appropriate. So the discussions should be happening to get a sense of what the community values for students and what you'd like to see. And the district goals that are developed annually by the superintendent with the input of the board, allows for that discussion of what we would like to see and what we would focus on, and what's possible, right? And what are the other needs and things that require our attention? So yeah, that's part of that, but understanding that the board isn't writing those district goals, you want to have that discussion and that input towards the development of those goals and then approve those district goals. The district goals are approved by the board, and then that is what sets the focus for the superintendent to create the action plans to move ahead on those things day to day, right? Running the day-to-day operations. And he will be evaluated on achieving those district goals or the reasonable, if they're multi-year goals, the reasonable completion of the first in that year, right? So when you're evaluating the superintendent, those district goals are there, and he provides supporting documents to show how he's achieved those or achieved up to the expected point of achieving a multi-year goal. So that's the conversation that has to happen around it. And I would caution, though, it shouldn't be just reflective of what the board thinks is important. The board is reflecting the community, so we want to make it available to the community to participate through strategic planning, through informal ways where they can come out. Back in my day when I was on the board, we had a schedule of coffees with the superintendent, a more relaxed environment, not a formal board meeting where the community could come out and talk about those kinds of things that they valued and were interested in and get that feedback. And that's something that the superintendent then considers, and you as a board can consider about how you go forward on it. Okay.
Great, thanks, everyone. So we're going to now move to the side tables, but first I'm going to adjourn so that our staff can go home while we're doing our workshops. So the Board of Education will meet in public session on Thursday, February 27, 2025 at 6:30 PM, where action will be taken. Mr. Bing, I would now like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting on Tuesday, February 4th at 8 PM. May I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Callahan. All in favor? Great, meeting is adjourned.